welcome back to Two Guys Talking Sales. I'm Kevin.
I'm Sean.
And we're happy you're here. A couple things. In this podcast, we'll talk real sales issues, big and small for salespeople, for selling solutions, situations, and for sales leadership. We've built successful careers individually around the problems facing B2B sales professionals. From software and services to manufacturing and distribution, we've sold to and for some of the world's largest brands and some you've never heard of. For today, by the next 15 minutes, we're going to talk about something near and dear to all of us: compensation plans and money. So hold your hat, get ready for this. It's going to be a fun ride. We'll take this issue, dig into it, and hopefully give you some tools for if you experience, whether you're setting or evaluating compensation plans, how you can decide if it's a good plan or needs some tweaking. So Sean, let's get started.
Yeah, so compensation is important for everybody that's in sales. It's why we do what we do. Let's be honest. If you say that you're in sales because you like to talk to people and all the other things, that's all well and good. But the reality is you're not doing it unless you're paid good money. And it's not unusual for our employers to put a variable compensation with our base salary, if we have a base salary at all. So we should probably talk about that next a little bit. So what do you think, Kevin? Base salary, variable compensation, what's your thoughts on those things?
You know, it's fun, and I love talking about this subject because invariably, and I'm watching this great October weather, I just went light and dark, so I'm going shadow. My apologies for the granularity on the video. I love talking with CEOs about this, right? Because that's where the conversation starts when they work with us. And I say, you know what? I try to hire salespeople who are coin operated. They are we as a subset of the population need to be focused on the payout, right? Yes, we're going to give good customer service. Yes, we're looking for all those other capabilities and capacities inside our good candidate. But people need to want and be hungry for opportunity. And we do that with compensation plans. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say 100% commission, while enticing, I always thought that was a really great opportunity, is really scary. And 100% guarantee is equally as scary, right? That's the two ends of the spectrum where we're talking about who's owning the most risk. So let's actually start the conversation there of why not to have 100% guarantee or 100% commission.
Okay, I'll do 100% guarantee. Let's do that one first, right?
Sure.
So 100% guarantee means that the salesperson inevitably becomes a little concerned or gets a little frustrated when that big order comes in that is above and beyond maybe other members of the team. Now that's assuming that there's multiple people in the company that are selling. So that 100% base means I bring a big deal and nothing happened for me, but the other guy, he didn't bring in that big deal. I did 4 times what that other guy did. That's just not fair. I don't like that. So I leave.
Okay.
Right?
So then you've got the 100% commission where people are only looking for the big ticket. Just think bright lights, blinkety blink. I'm going after that deal, which means competitively and culturally that people are scratching and pawing and clawing for the, I'm going to use my air quotes here, best accounts, best deals, which can make your customer service suffer, right? So if you've got what would be considered a small or mid-tier deal or a really big deal, the attention only gets paid to the really big ones because, right, they're the trophies. They're the things that do the big bonuses of sorts.
I agree. And you got the problem of collaboration. You kind of alluded to this. So I just want to dig into it a little bit, lean in. You got the problem with collaboration among the team, learning from each other, mentoring from each other. Gee, this worked for me. Joe, why don't you try this as well? Or gee, that didn't work for me. Joe, don't do that because it just didn't work for me. Be interested in your feedback on that. But that collaboration capability is really important, and it doesn't happen, or it's hard to make happen. I shouldn't say doesn't, because you can do some things, but it's hard to make happen in the pure commission sales structure, where you only get to take home what you eat or what you kill.
Right. Completely agree. So to lean into that, now that we kind of set the outer limits of both of the plans, all base or all commission, let's hit it right in the middle, and then let's work off of center, 50-50 plan. I like 50-50 plans because it allows you to reasonably set on target earnings for people. It allows you to do other things like create incentives or bonuses or target products or target product lines. Your experience with 50/50s and others?
Yeah, I much prefer 50-50 to just about everything else. In fact, if somebody tells me they're not at 50-50, I'm going to say justify why it's not 50-50, especially if it's like 60-40, right? Like what, why, right? So 50-50, I think, is the standard, the gold standard of compensation plans for salespeople. And it
Mhm.
really should be justify why it's not 50-50 if you're going to do anything else. It gives the salesperson the ability to have some money is going to come in on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, whatever the case
Mhm.
is. That ability to budget, to plan is good for that salesperson's spouse, the family life. That yes, we're going to make the house payment. We may not go on vacation, but we're going to make the house payment.
Yeah.
So that lack of concern of that, or covering that concern, that's just an important thing that we need to address and understand. The 50% variable, and by the way, when you do the variable plus the base, we call that on target earnings, OTE, right? So
Thank
let's
you
make
for
sure that,
clarifying
yeah,
that.
let's make sure that everybody has that terminology set up. So when you do the variable, then we have the ability to, like you were talking about, incent people to do better. Now there are times, I think, when 75-25, and you do it either way, it can be helpful. If you have a market, if the salesperson has a market where the revenue is almost guaranteed, then there really isn't any reason why that salesperson would be upset if it's more variable at that point, because the
Mhm.
minimum is already there. You know you're going to do $3 million. So why are you worried about it? Because you know you're going to do $3 million. So, or whatever the right numbers are, obviously.
Right.
Um, so why worry about it? On the flip side, if you're a young company, a startup, I can see going closer to 100% base, or a 75-25 kind of a compensation plan, maybe some guarantees, some bonuses, some spiffs, some MBOs, managed by objective kind of compensation, because the customer doesn't, or the company doesn't know how to sell their product yet. They don't know what their
Mhm.
product works. There's lots of effort just to get that customer across the threshold. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on those things, Kevin?
So I completely agree on when you're a startup or you're a disruptor kind of company. If you kind of flag, if you raise your hand when somebody says, "What kind of company are you?" and you're thinking, "I'm a disruptor. I'm about to change a market space." You're in that kind of subset of the population where we're saying you got to figure out how to sell your product. So you got to do price market fit, and if you're pricing it one day at subscription and the next day at enterprise and you haven't gotten a bite on either, that tells me you're not don't have a good feel on price market fit yet. Um, but I definitely like the difference between 50/50 and 80/20 90/10, not a 55/45 or a 50, 60/40, because it's just negligible, right? When you get down to the real numbers, it sounds good to say we have a 60/40 split, but really the numbers are too close for that typically. Um, I also like to break up in this discussion when I talk about how soon do you pay the incentive, right? Now, that's a big topic and can get really sticky. Think about, you can think construction, you can think of service implementation, you can think of, a year's worth of a rollout of a project that you've sold or a solution. In all of those cases, you have a sale that happens months, quarters, maybe even a year before the actual project begins. But you don't want to wait a year to get commission, right?
Right.
So as a sales manager, I always say, let's make sure we're incentivizing the behaviors we want, which is always go sell more, right?
Right.
Sell more faster.
Right.
So to that end, I like to talk about, regardless of what plan we land on, let's make sure we're paying people quickly and we're getting the longevity of the work to go within their repeating, wash, rinse, repeat of the selling behavior.
I agree. And in fact, you and I both spent some time in the software industry, and it's very typical in the software industry now to have software as a service where I'm going to pay up front, and that's going to give me a year or maybe 2 years or whatever of my ability to use that piece of software. So it should be a financial incentive for most companies to say, what if we could get the customer to agree to 5 years? Well, that really helps the planning of the company out. Maybe we should have a different incentive structure, a different bonus plan for all those out years. And how does that work? But there are cases where once you buy that first year, the renewal of it is just going to be automatic. Customer can't turn it off, right?
Right.
So, so there is some reasons not to do that, not to pay for out years or not to pay too much for out years. But for the most part, most of our software products that are out there, the customer can turn it off after the end at the end of the contract. So we probably need to have longer contracts that locks the customer in more. The other thing that I like to think about is when do they get paid? If they get paid monthly for their commission or they get paid quarterly. That's kind of the two that I hear about a lot is, you get paid for October and November or whatever. I like to remind companies that what happens in sales, and I've talked about this before, I think I mentioned this on the previous broadcast a week ago. A salesperson can't speed up a deal, but a salesperson can slow down the deal. And sometimes the salesperson slowing down a deal can just because there's other things in life that got in the way. If I'm getting paid on a quarterly basis and it's the 1st of October and there's work that has to get done on that deal, and I know it's going to close. I'm pretty sure it's going to close, but I got some stuff to do personally. My spouse has some things that wants me to do some things. There's a weekend going on, so I just don't want to get that quote done over the weekend, because if I look at that work, my wife would tell me like, well, what difference does it make if you get it done on Saturday night versus you get it done on Tuesday night? Customer's going to buy and you're not going to get paid on it until January 15th. This is if you're on a quarterly payment schedule. However, if I'm getting paid in November for what I close in October, well, okay, now there's a little bit more incentive for me to make that deadline and get that deal done. So I like monthly comp plans or pay plans that are delivering on a monthly basis if the company can afford it, right? So that's a big issue. That's a CFO level controller based conversation. But I do like monthly pay plans versus quarterly pay plans.
Yeah. And we should probably give a shout out to our peers in the CFO realm and accounting realm right now. Sean and I will probably categorically go on record as saying we don't believe in commissioning every month for every single solitary license down at the $3.80 per user seat, right? That's not what we're talking about commission. We're talking about deal commissions here.
Right.
We're not trying to get down to the line item transaction level and calculate each one based on when somebody paid, right?
Yeah,
it's just too much work, right? That's the teasing point here of why some companies only pay quarterly,
right?
When why others pay weekly or monthly or by, there's all kinds of how you pay. This is why this is such a sticky subject, right? Because there's so many different challenges across verticals. But I would typically say to you and to everyone that the compensation plan has to make sense to the person receiving it, makes sense to the person administrating it, and makes sense to the company goals. Make sure we're incentivizing and compensating the behaviors we want, right?
Exactly right.
What's the number one question you ask about compensation plans when you're meeting with someone new, CEO or sales team?
Well, I typically, when I'm asking about compensation plans, is first of all, I try to find out how many of your salespeople actually made the number that you told them they're going to make their OTE, because that's a big issue. It's a customer happiness. So as we talk about this, the economy right now, and somebody might be listening to our broadcast, 2 years from now. So the economy today is very, very tight for hiring salespeople. It's expensive to hire, and it's easy for salespeople to leave. You can go on LinkedIn right now, and there's all kinds of job offers out there, job opportunities for salespeople. So we need to make sure that our compensation is fair, right? So salespeople that don't think they're being treated fairly, they're going to leave. They're going to be frustrated, because if you're frustrated with your company, it's hard to be a salesperson. It's hard to be involved in that. So I think that's the thing that I talk about more than anything is, are you being fair to your salespeople, or are you treating them like second-class citizens just because they're on a variable basis? What about you?
Interesting. I typically start with is everyone on the same compensation plan? And when's the last time you changed your compensation plan?
That's a good point.
Well, I'm a very strong advocate for the owners of the company to say, hey, you have differing goals every year. We should probably be revisiting the number of times we're changing our incentives to help you reach those goals, right? So that would kind of lean towards hey, we need to have an annual sales plan.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
and
I
it's
I I think that's a really good point for us to end this broadcast on, because just the reality is that this should be something that you're constantly looking at, constantly making sure it's fair, and constantly making sure it aligns with the sales goals of the company. I think if you took anything from this broadcast, that's a good point to take right there. Thank you for that one, Kevin.
sure. I'm here to please.
So I do want to close this up. So thank you very much for spending your time with us. Just so you know, and we haven't said this on every one of our broadcasts, but we actually got these questions given to us by a sales assessment that we do with our clients a lot of times before we engage with our clients. It helps us learn about the company a little bit. So there's 10 questions that we ask our clients, or 10 topics that we ask our clients to give us our feedback for. That assessment, if you're curious how you rank on that, if you go in the comments, you'll see a comment from me, and there'll be a sales assessment link that you can choose. Choose one of those links and just fill it out and see how you do. See what your score is. See what your feedback is when on that sales assessment. But we do appreciate you spending your time with us. We're, like we said, we try to get these done in about 15 minutes. We're usually a minute or two long, and we're sorry about that. We'll get a little bit better, maybe not be as verbose in the future. But we're gonna have another one of these in 1 week. Next Tuesday, 4:30, it'll be dropped onto LinkedIn. So we hope that you'll come by and you'll listen to us. If you have questions, if you have something you like Kevin and I to talk about, drop those into the comment, and we will pick those up, and we'll talk about those in a future episode. And we'll give you a shout out if it came from you as well, if you want us to. So thank you very much, Kevin. Thanks for taking the time for doing this, and thank you for everybody that was listening. We really appreciate you, and we hope you come back.
Thanks, Sean. Happy selling.
Happy selling.